Today we begin the Holy Week. Holy Week is a journey from one mountain to another mountain. And in between or during this journey, many things happens. The journey begins on a mountain named Mount of Olives. This journey was a procession to Jerusalem, and his disciples and all the people, they were all shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David, Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is the one who came in the name of the Lord, Hosanna in the highest. They were all shouting and yelling, and there was a huge crowd surrounded by Jesus. And when they entered in Jerusalem, the Jerusalem was shaken, and such huge was the crowd. Now the second procession, started from the courtyard of Pilate. Jesus is the main person. No donkey, nothing. Surrounded by crowd, probably the same crowd. They were also shouting and yelling. They were not shouting Hosanna, but they were shouting, crucify him, crucify him. And this journey started from the courtyard of Pilate, and this journey was heading to another mountain, the mountain of Calvary, where the place is called Golgotha. The first journey was a cheerful journey, a rejoicing journey. People were very happy and they were rejoicing. But the second journey was cursing and yelling, crucify him, crucify him. The people were probably the same people, but everything changed. Why and what happened? Let us look into this. Now Jesus, throughout his 3 years ministry, he was preaching about repentance. He was moving around all the towns and villages of Galilee and Judea. And people were rejoicing because he was not only preaching, he was doing mighty works, miracles, healing the sick, casting out demons, raising the dead, multiplying and feeding bread to thousands of people. So people were very happy and they were in joy that this man, Jesus, is the Messiah. He is the Messiah God sent into this world. And so they received Jesus when he was entering into Jerusalem, the solemn entry into Jerusalem. And they were shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna, because they were expecting that Jesus Christ is going to Jerusalem and he is going to become the king. He is going to defeat the Romans, the Roman soldiers, the Roman power, the Roman governor, through his divine power, the mighty power that he cast out devil, the mighty power that he multiplied bread, the mighty power that healed the sick, the mighty power that he raised the dead. And with that same power, he is going to defeat the Romans, and he is going to be seated on the throne of Pilate. He is going to become the king of the Jews. This was the expectation of the people, and that is the reason they were shouting Hosanna. But when they entered the Jerusalem, people were expecting that Jesus is going to the palace, but he went to the temple. Then what did he do? He started cleansing the temple, casting out all the business people from the temple, overthrowing their tables and everything in the temple. Cast them out, those who are doing business in the temple. Then he started cursing the rulers, the powers, the authorities, criticizing them. And he started preaching about punishment, God's judgment, destruction of the Jerusalem temple, destruction of the city of Jerusalem. He started preaching and prophesying. People didn't like that. But Jesus was different. God's plan was different. The people's plan was that Jesus will become a king of the Jews by overthrowing the power of the Romans. He will be residing over the throne of David in Jerusalem. The crown the people expected was a golden crown, the crown that David was using, the crown of the king. The throne that people were expecting was the golden throne that Jesus is going to assume. But God's plan was different than from the plan of the people. God's plan was the crown not of gold, but of thorns. The throne that Jesus is going to be seated is not made by precious metal, but this throne is going to be a throne made with wood. It's called the cross. So God's plan was totally different from what people expected. And that is the reason they turned against Jesus. They turned against God. And they started yelling, "Crucify him, we don't need you." When Jesus was hanging on the cross, the people were shouting, "If you are a king, come down. You saved many. You cannot save yourself. You are hanging on the cross. Come down if you are a king. Come down if you are a king of the Jews and save yourself, save all of us." So for the people, the mission of Jesus was a failed mission. And that is why they were angry with Jesus. They shouted, "We don't need you, crucify him." But God's plan was totally different. God's plan was Jesus is the Messiah. He is the king. He's not the king of the Jews alone. He is going to become the king of the whole world, whole universe. The kingdom of the Jews, when David and Solomon died, it was all scattered, divided. But God's kingdom is not going to be divided. It is not going to be destroyed. It will be established forever. So God's plan about Jesus to become the king of the universe, is a suffering servant, taking the cross, dying up on the cross. The people expected that Jesus is going to destroy the enemies, the Romans. But God's plan was to destroy the eternal enemy. Who is that eternal enemy? The devil. So Jesus came into this world not to destroy the Romans, but to destroy the enemy, the devil, the sin, and redeem all of us from the slavery of sins. This was God's plan. Dear brothers and sisters, it may happen in our life too. When we realize that God's plan is different from our plan, we turn against God. We go away from God. God has a plan for each one of us. God has a plan for our country. God has a plan for the world. But we expect and we hope that our life will be a life of prosperity, peace. Our kingdom, our country must be a country with prosperity, peace, and everything. People will be happy, rejoicing. The world must be a prosperous world, a peaceful world. We expect that. That is our plan. But God's plan is not that. God's plan is a crown of thorn and a cross. That is God's plan. But remember, there is a glorious victory after the cross, an everlasting glory after the cross. And we don't see that. The world did not see that. The glorious resurrection of Jesus Christ. When God raised Jesus from the dead, he became king of the whole universe. An everlasting kingdom he established. That kingdom, no powers in this world can destroy. No earthly powers can destroy that kingdom. There is an everlasting kingdom. That is what God established for his Son, Jesus Christ. As we heard from the second reading, St. Paul to the Philippians, he emptied himself, taken the form of a slave, and lived as a human being. He was obedient to his Father and fully obedient, even taking the cross. He was totally obedient. That is the suffering servant we see in Jesus Christ. And that is how he became the king of the universe. And that is how he established his kingdom on this earth. So those who believe in Jesus Christ, those who accept Jesus Christ as a Lord, will become a member of this kingdom, the everlasting kingdom. So dear brothers and sisters, we have an expectation of our own life. We have a hope that what we are going to do. Our plan is having a prosperous life, beautiful family, with no illness, nothing, a loving, a happy, a joyful life on this earth. This is what we all have expectations. But when things changes, when failures come into our life, when illness or disease happens in our life and in the family, when death of someone who is so beloved to us happens, we turn against God. We become like those crowd who are shouting, Hosanna and crucify. So when we realize that God's plan is not what we think, it is different from what we think, we turn away from God, turn against God. This is what happens to so many people in this world who left the faith in God. They did not realize God's plan in their life. They were thinking only about their own plan, their own expectations about their own life. Dear brothers and sisters, God has prepared a plan for each one of us. Our life will move according to the plan of God. And there is a crown of thorn in God's plan. The throne that Jesus has prepared for us is a cross. And there is suffering in our life. That is God's plan. When we look into our country, people used to say, what is happening in our country? What is happening in this world? People are so much worried. God has a plan. There is a cross in our way. There is a cross in our country, in our world. And through that cross only we will be glorified. We cannot avoid the cross. We cannot run away from the cross. It is prepared for us, each one of us. We must accept that is a plan of God. That is a plan of God for each one of us and for this world. We must willfully accept and obedient to God in taking up the cross as Jesus did. Never run away from the cross. So, this Holy Week teaches us that we must be willing to accept God's plan in our life. Never run away from God's plan. Never leave God that God is not favoring us. Never leave the faith and leave the church because God is not favorable for us. But accept everything that happens in our life. It is in the plan of God and which that God has already prepared for us. And this is the meaning of celebrating this Holy Week. God bless all of us.